I'm Carey Stinson, and my journey through life has been quite an adventure. For over 20 years, I played Barney the Dinosaur on tour and 7 seasons of the hugely popular TV show Barney and Friends. Now my journey is to bring together friends and guests from all over the entertainment world for inspiring and at times amusing behind-the-scenes conversation. I'm Carey Stinson, and this is Purple Roads. Welcome to Purple Roads. My name is Carey Stinson, and as always, I'm so glad you're here. What a special guest we have today. What a great show we have today. We have Marc Summers. You probably know him from Double Dare and his new off-Broadway show, The Life and Slimes of Marc Summers. Marc, how are you?
I'm doing quite well. I'm dealing with voice issues because we're doing so many shows a week. We started this thing back in January, and I'm coming down to the home stretch here. But man, the wear and tear, standing on that stage 90 minutes a day is tough.
You know, it's funny. I used to do that, but I was only inside a costume at that time, so I didn't have to do any of the speaking part. I just had the physical aspect,
which is hard enough, you know.
Yes, I did. You know, when I signed up for it, I went out for 9 months out of the year, having no clue what I signed up for, and an amazing experience. But the physical part of it's very difficult.
How did you get that job?
The short of that story is that I was a musician out of college, and someone had told me, this was before there was a TV show at the time, and someone said they were looking for a second actor to play Barney the Dinosaur. And I had no idea what Barney was, and I went and auditioned and got the job, and it was crazy.
Right? That's very cool.
Yeah, it was crazy. They would just say, hey, you know, I would do a JCPenney appearance. I would do come into the studio for a photo shoot. Next thing I knew, the photo shoot was People magazine.
You never know, right?
You never know. You never know. So cool. Let's start that with you. How did you get into Double Dare?
It was all a mistake. I was sort of had one step outside the business. I was doing comedy at the Comedy Store. I was a regular starting in '76 and working at a place called the Magic Castle and doing warm-ups on a lot of TV shows, and kept wanting to host, but they kept telling me come back when I have gray hair and wrinkles. And a friend of mine, Dave Garrison, who was a ventriloquist, had come out and had sort of hit the wall as far as becoming a performer and decided he wanted to become a producer, and got the call to go audition for Double Dare. And he called me up and said, I'm not going to do this anymore. Do you want to go instead of me? And I figured, what the hell, why not? And I went in, and they had auditioned 1,000 in New York and 1,000 in LA, and I landed. It changed my life.
Wow. Same for me in this. I'd never worked with kids before, so I really didn't know what that experience was going to be like. What was it for you working with kids?
Well, I started off doing magic. So I 4 to 8 different birthday parties a weekend. And so I was used to being around it and always liked kids. I never wanted to host a kid show, never interested me at all, but I just wanted to get on TV and host something. The fact that it was Double Dare and a children's program, that was fine. But I never approached it as a kid show. I always, pretended I was Barker or Sajak or Trebek and treated the kids like adults, and never talked to them in a squeaky voice and said things like, do you have a girlfriend or something like that? I just treated them like, grown-ups. And it seemed to work for me. They respected me. I respected them. And it just kind of took off.
When did you realize that this show was going to be such a hit and the importance of what you were doing?
Well, the buzz was pretty instantaneous. At the time, UHF stations were still around. And different Strokes and Facts of Life were the big afternoon shows when kids came home from school. And the ratings started to go in the toilet on those shows. And they traced them to Nickelodeon because they did something called Playground Talk. Kids would go to the school the next day and say, I saw this crazy show where people jumped into 5,000 pounds of baked beans and they won a trip to space camp. Oh, what's that? And so, there's an article in Broadcasting Magazine from now 25 years ago, maybe longer, that the 3 most important people in cable in the early days was Larry King, because he was on CNN and was revolutionary for his time, Gallagher, because he was doing specials on Showtime, and me, because I got kids to go to the parents and get them to buy cable.
When did you realize what you were becoming for kids? Like I grew up watching Mr. Rogers, and I watched Sesame Street, and it had a massive influence for me. And then when I started playing Barney, I had the chance to meet several of them, and it was a big deal to me. And
Oh,
the
yeah.
influence there. I mean, what about for you and this show for kids?
Well, we were asked to do a personal appearance in a mall outside of DC. And I figured, oh, this is going to be interesting. Nobody's going to show up. Well, 5,000 people showed up to this mall. And the mall was happy, but the Macy's and the major anchor stores were upset because we had thousands of kids blocking their entrance, and the food court was jumping up and down. And then we did a couple of those where we were getting up to 12 and 15,000 people on a weekend, and we thought, oh my God, this is crazy. And some person in marketing said, well, if we're drawing this many people in a mall, why don't we do it in theaters? And the next thing I know, I'm selling out the Palace of Auburn Hills, 20,000 people in Detroit, doing Double Dare live. And so it was timing. It was the right place at the right time. They had done focus groups and found out that kids didn't have their own game show, and they were living vicariously through their parents watching Price or Wheel. Right. And we provided a need that apparently was out there, and nobody had tackled up to that point.
Now, did you have anything to do with, were you just hosting a show? Were you producing it as well?
I was producing it. I was writing. I was working on physical. I was doing everything. So yeah, we had a great team. Alan Silverberg, head writer, was the brains behind the feel. But Mike Klinghoffer, our exec producer, Dana Calderwood, our producer and director. It was a hard, hardworking group of people. We all got along very well, and we kind of formed what we eventually ended up with.
Coming up with the games, coming up with all that. I mean, is it just be as ridiculous as you can be?
To a certain extent, but we tried things like we would do physical challenge tryouts with kids in the Philadelphia. We started in Philly, then we moved to New York, and then to Orlando. And from 7 to 9, we would try out physical challenges. And if they couldn't be done 3 times, then we didn't put them on the air, because we figured, well, if it couldn't be done at all, we don't want them. And if it only got done 1 every 10 times, we didn't want them, because we actually wanted the kids to win.
Right.
And so it was a lot of trial and error, but it was great fun. And once again, the camaraderie amongst all of us. When you're doing these things, you don't really understand the impact that you might be having. But here I am doing the show Off-Broadway now. We've been doing it almost 16 weeks. And, I have 40-year-olds come and tell me stories about coming home from school and turning us on and watching us. And then they were nice enough to follow me over to Food Network when I started doing Unwrapped. So I've had this core group of humans who've kind of enjoyed whatever it is I've done. This thing started in 1986, and here we are in 2024. So they've been around for a while.
It's just awesome. What do you think it is? What do you think it is that they gravitate to?
Well, they did focus groups back in the day, and they thought I was like some crazy uncle or, older brother. They liked the fact that I respected them, didn't talk down to them. And I was just kind of silly. I mean, I was doing impressions, back in the early shows of, Paul Lynde and Henry Fonda. And of course, the kids didn't know who the hell they were, but I guess they were just so ridiculous. I used to do this impression of Ethel Merman, which of course nobody knew. And one day in the audience, a kid said, hey, I do my own Ethel Merman impression. And I brought the kid back up after the first commercial break, and we're singing "There's No Business Like Show Business" like Ethel Merman. So it just got to be stranger and stranger, but in a really positive way.
And when did you start figuring that out? Like, you go in as a host, and then you start realizing there's a lot of leeway here, right? We can do a lot of different things here.
Yeah, I had nobody sort of controlling me, which was a good thing. Jeffrey Darby, who was our exec from Nickelodeon, tried to reel me in, but it wasn't very easy. And then he went back to New York and did his job. And the rest of our staff thought it was funny and a little silly and crazy. And so they just let me go. And very rarely did we get our hands slapped. One day, a question was about what hairstyle sounds like an item of food or something. The answer was the hairstyle was a bun. And then I said, unless you're a Jewish girl, then it'd be a bagel. Well, all hell broke. Jewish Defense League thought I was anti-Semitic and, all this other kind of stuff. And I had to remind them that I too was Jewish. And then they got more upset. They said, even worse that you would do that kind of stuff. It's too stereotypical. So, people tend to lose their senses of humor. um, on certain things. And certainly now life is really crazy based on what's
Right.
going on in the world. But it was a different time 35 years ago when we did that stuff. So I just went for it. And, very rarely got reeled in. And the kids seemed to like what I was doing.
It's what I love about the kids part of it, because I found that way too. We had people that didn't like Barney at the time. We got a lot of hate, but that was only from parents, right? And they really just didn't understand it. But the kids got it. You could have fun with them, and there was no rules to it for the most part too, right? Because it's a purple dinosaur, so you can do all those things.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, kids' point of view is totally different than an adult. And adults tend to, as you know, look at things a little too seriously and take themselves seriously as well. And, maybe they got tired of the same songs over and over again, but that's what kids went to. They liked, hearing that stuff. My kids were big fans of Raffi. And I can't tell you how many Raffi concerts I went to. Did I love Raffi? He was okay, but my kids loved him. So you go where your kids want to go.
Right. I'm curious on the show with the kids. So what was it like when the kids lost? The ones that won, were they really competitive, or were they all just having fun?
They were having fun. Here's the thing. We were rewarding them for getting messy. As a kid, you're being told by your parents, straighten your room and stay clean and don't do this and that. And, we were giving them prizes and money for jumping into 5,000 pounds of baked beans.
Right.
And so, we were the anti-parents, and we never had a kid cry or get upset because they lost. They got on the show and generally got slimed or messed up in some form or fashion. Brian Gumbel asked me, first time I did the Today Show, are we teaching kids that they are being judged by what they have and not who they are? And I said, Brian, we did a focus group once, and the kids said they didn't care whether their money prizes or not. They just want to get messy. And that's what it kind of came down to.
So on that, let's talk about slime. Where did that come from? How did that become as big as it's become?
Well, that started on a show called You Can't Do That on Television before us. And I get all the credit for it, but it wasn't me. If you said the words "I don't know" on "You Can't Do That on Television," you would get slimed, and they saw how popular that was. So slime became an integral part, not only of Double Dare but of the entire network. But we had boatloads of it, and back in the day, it was made out of vanilla pudding, applesauce, green food coloring, and that was pretty much it. Now they have this company that makes slime exclusively for Nickelodeon. And when we brought Double Dare back 4 or 5 years ago as exec producer, I had to go in and talk to these guys about the viscosity and do I want it to flow quickly or do I want to, crazy stuff like that. Where back in the day, we just made it every day fresh and whatever happened.
I love that.
It's
I
funny.
love that. So let's talk about the show, the life and the life and slime. Marc Summers. Let's talk about it, because I love this. I'd read about it that this is something you wanted to do for a long time.
I went to New York in 1964 with my confirmation class from Indianapolis, and I had never seen a Broadway show. And I saw Fiddler on the Roof. Herschel Bernardi had just taken over for Zero Mostel, and I went, "Oh my God, what is this? How do I become a part of that?" So I was 13 years old when that happened, and got involved with magic and stand-up comedy and hosting and one thing after another. But I always went to theater, and I always had it in the back of my mind. And I went through this period where I had a lot of sort of negative things happen to me. I was in a bad car accident where I broke every bone in my face, and I got cancer, and my whole thing about OCD. And I just kept hitting walls. And I finally kept talking about, I want to do theater. I want to do theater. And I met a producer one night in New York City who had a summer stock theater out in Long Beach Island, New Jersey. And he offered me the role of Vince Fontaine in Grease. And I was how many years ago was that? 11 years ago. And I loved it and met some great people. And one of the people who was backstage with me, because I had 2 scenes, I think, and my friend only had 1 or 2 as well. And so we were backstage most of the time just talking and laughing and having a good time. And I sort of let him know that I wanted to do more theater. And he said, "Oh, I have this friend, Alex Brightman. You should meet Alex." And so when we finished the 3 weeks of doing Grease, Alex Brightman and Drew Gasparini and I started to hang out. And I mentioned one night that I wanted to do a one-man show. And for the next year and a half, I took these guys to dinner, and they just asked me questions about my life, and they took notes. And after a year and a half, they handed me a script and said, "Here's your one-man show." So initially, we did it in Bloomington, Indiana. Then we did it at the Adirondack Theater Festival. And then we put it to bed for several years. COVID happened, and I thought, well, we'll never do this again. And about a year ago, January, I got called to do the Mount Gretna Theater in Pennsylvania, and finally the Alleyway Theater in Buffalo. And when we were playing Buffalo in September, the Mrs. Doubtfire tour opened next to us. And the director came in, Steve Edlin, and said, wow, this show was great. Have you ever thought about doing it in New York? And I said, every day of my life, but I don't know anybody in New York. And he said, you do now. And he called the Schubert organization, who put me together with a producer. And we started rehearsing in New York the 29th of January, opened in previews Feb 14th. And we've been performing on a 16-week run. We closed June 2nd and having the best time of my life.
Wow. There's so many places I want to go with all of that. Let's start with theater, because I've been very fortunate to get to do all those, from TV to theater, and there to me is nothing like live audiences. What has that experience been like for you?
Well, I've only known live. That's, I've gone from magic to stand-up comedy and
Right.
all that. So that's where I feel the best. But to get on stage and recite 90 minutes of lines that somebody else wrote. Now, it's my story and it's my life,
Right.
but I didn't have the ability to write that. And Alex Brightman has starred in School of Rock, Beetlejuice, The Shark is Broken, and Spamalot. Been nominated for 2 Tonys. He's brilliant, not only as an actor, but I think so even more so as a writer. And he was able to capture my voice with a great sense of humor, but telling a great story. And it's just been a remarkable situation. The response we get from the audience, the stage door meetings of the way we touch people, because we touch on OCD, we touch on cancer, we touch on a lot of stuff, and it tends to hit a lot of people. And the amount of people we've been able to help since we've been doing this is pretty remarkable, and I love that aspect of it.
Well, and talk about the balance of it, right? Because this is also a fun show, right? We've kind of got a little Double Dare going on stage.
Yeah, we play Double Dare for about 10 minutes. We have sets and physical challenges and questions, and that's fun. And we talk a little bit about my life at Food Network. But the majority of the show is about overcoming the word no. Most people get told that they can't do something, and they go, oh, okay, I guess you're right. I never accepted that. From the time I was a little kid, no to me meant not yet. You're either not ready for me or I'm not ready for it. But if I hang in long enough. And so rejection didn't exist in my life. Guy said, you're not good enough for the part. And I go, okay, well, then I'll call you next week. And I did. And I never gave up. And I think about the people who get up and go to work every day and hate their job, which I could never do. I always feel like I've never worked a day in my life. I've got to play television. I've got to produce shows. I did magic. I did stand-up. When I started the Comedy Store in '76, I started with Dave Letterman, Jay Leno, Gary Shandling, Robin Williams. I was surrounded by very talented people and learned a lot just being in the room. So I've had sort of a charmed existence. But the other thing is, I'm not an overnight success. I didn't get Double Dare till I was 33. So I had been around, and I thought, well, maybe this is never going to happen. But because I looked younger at the time, focus groups thought I was in my early 20s when I was 33, and that helped the cause as well. Plus, I had written game shows. My first job in television was writing Truth or Consequences the last year Bob Barker hosted it. And so I was around the game world for a number of years. And so all that groundwork helped me to get to this point.
I absolutely love that you said this about no, because I've been the same way. I was told no so many times when I got through in this, and I had never been in a costume. I had never done all these different things. And you see that with actors and any performers. The only ones that really become successful have just gotten maybe not used to it, but they understand that that's part of the game.
It is. I mean, no is 90% of the time the answer. So if you get upset and depressed, probably not the business for you. But it's all about timing. And if you're willing to put in the time and wait it out, as Gary Collins said to me once, unless you're the most unlucky human being in the world, odds are you're going to be all right, you know?
So when we all were putting this show together, you knew that Double Dare had to be part of it. Whose idea was it to actually do part of the show, part of the game show on the show itself?
Oh, of course, had to do it. Say expectations of if you know me, either know me from Double Dare, What Would You Do, or Unwrapped, and you have to touch on them. Now we don't talk about what would you do at all in the show, um, but Double Dare is an integral part. We talk about how I got the job, and then we break out for 10 minutes into the show, where we bring out podiums that look remarkably similar to what we had back in the day, and we ask questions, and we do physical challenges, and we give away prizes, and every night on stage when the person is selected out of the bowl that I pull their name out of, and they get a little messy because we're playing pies in the pants or something else.
Right.
And I'll say to them, how was this experience? And they thought every time I'm living my childhood dream. This is what I always wanted to do. I'm 42 years old, but I'm finally getting there. And everybody does. They become about 11 or 12 years old when they're on that stage. And it's a wonderful moment. And the audience loves that as well.
Did you have any idea what the reaction would be? The fact that people come to you and tell you how much the show means to you and the struggles in the life that you've gone through and what you've helped them.
I had no idea when I first started this back in Indiana 8 years ago. My goal was I was not a particularly good actor. And I said, if I could make one person cry, I will feel that I've accomplished my goal. And on opening night in Bloomington, a boatload of people were in tears. And I thought, oh my God. And it wasn't because of my acting, it was because of the writing at the time. But here's the best news. So when I first started doing this, I was still exec producing dinner and Restaurant Impossible. And Robert Irvine, who's the nicest, fantastic guy in the world, was not happy that I was not on the set doing the show. I was taking a little leave of absence so I could go do my theater stuff. And it was hard to focus on the show because Robert would call and not be happy that I wasn't there. So fast forward the tape, I was trying to retire when the show kind of came out of mothballs. And opening night, Alex Brightman, who hadn't seen me do the show in quite some time, came up to me and said, I got to talk to you. And I said, okay, what's going on? He said, when did you learn how to act? And that was the best compliment I ever got because he said, I explained to him, I don't have anything to do but focus on this show. The phone's not ringing. I don't have to produce any shows. I don't have to go to an edit room. All I have to do is make this show work, deliver the lines properly, and get the audience involved. And luckily, I've been able to do that. And it's the best job I've ever had. I love it.
How hard was it to
I
get
have
up?
known that this was even a possibility. I would have done this a whole lot sooner than 72. I would have done this more as my career. Because now I've been asked to actually audition for a couple of Broadway shows because people actually came who are casting people and saw me and made me offers. So apparently I've gotten pretty good at it. And, for whatever time I have left on this lovely planet, I'm going to try and do more of this.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think it's so important, that as we get older, a lot of people stop, right? It's just like taking no, it's the same thing. And here you are doing what you're doing. And I knew you were 72, but you don't look 72. You don't act, you just being you, doing your thing. I love that.
That's it. I try to stay healthy. I walk a lot. April, I did 171 miles in New York, 432,000 steps. I was in Boston the last 2 days. I averaged about 18,000 steps a day, about 7.5 miles. And that's my exercise. And I walk to the theater every night. I'm up at 76th and Broadway. The theater's at 50th and 8th. So when I walk down, I get energized. And at the end of the night, when I walk back, it kind of calms me down. And it works on so many different levels.
And the physicality of doing it?
I mean, I need to get myself psyched up going. And the cool thing about I've been around forever, on my way down to the theater, people will stop me and say, hey, have a good show tonight, Mark, which I love. I think it's amazing. And then when I come home at night, there's fewer people out, but it gives me a chance to unwind. And I think all that's necessary. When I get home, I can't sleep. I generally can't go to sleep till 3 or 4 in the morning because I'm still so revved up from doing the show. But that's all good. My life is upside down right now because my wife is back in LA and my kids are grown up and my grandkids are doing their thing. So I'm kind of here on my own. And it's at times, I'm not going to lie to you, lonely, but you have to make choices. And as a man who's been on the road for 12 years, as Barney, everybody thinks it's glamorous and we're having the best time of our lives. And when we're performing, we are. But it's the other, 23 hours that we have to contend with. And that ain't easy.
Yeah, it's funny. There was a point where I kind of knew it was time, and that's when I got off the road. Where it just, we were traveling on buses across the country.
Oh yeah, been there.
With a bus driver at 3 a.m, talking, thinking, you can't really sleep anymore, and maybe it's time to move to the next thing.
Here's a quick impression: me being in the bus on the last Double Dare tour. Right?
I know it. I know
it's bumpy. It's loud. You have satellite TV, but it comes and goes because depending where you're on the road,
right.
1 minute you're watching, and the next 20 minutes you're not.
Right.
You eat way too much junk food. You drink too much tea or coffee, or God knows what else. And yes, you're like a little family, but after a while, I kind of want to go to my own family.
Right. Couple more things I want to ask you real quick.
Yes, sir.
I'm really curious. What is it like for you to talk about OCD and to talk about these things that are so personal and put them on stage?
It's the right thing to do. It's this whole phrase about paying it forward. I wrote a book called Everything in Its Place, 1999, and the best thing that ever happens is when I'm walking down the street, going to have lunch or something, and people say, I didn't know what I had until I saw your book, or until I saw you on Oprah, or until I heard you on Howard Stern or whatever. And when I found out about it, it changed my life. What more can you ask for? And so at this point in my life, I have nothing to lose. And so, yeah, I talk about a lot of stuff that most people, I guess, would be normally not want to discuss. And when I came out with OCD in 1999, people thought I was crazy. And it cost me work. And it was a tough time. And, I was supposed to host Hollywood Squares. I got fired because I had OCD, for God's sakes. That would be the biggest lawsuit in the world now. But back then, 25 years ago, nobody was going to do anything. There was barely any kind of help or medication for OCD. Now I ended up going to behavior therapy and all that stuff. And we talk about that in the show. And you can hear the people crying in the audience, and you're getting to them, because the first 50 minutes is a lot of fun and games. And then after we play Double Dare, it takes this left turn, and we get it heavy with the OCD and intrusive thoughts and the cancer diagnosis and all that stuff. And people don't expect it. And they say to me after the show, I had no idea that's what this thing was going to be about. And the fact that we can take them on that ride, once again, because of Alex Brightman, it's informative, educational, entertaining, and funny all at the same time. Not easy to do.
You look at it now, can you believe the career you've had?
No, you can't. And you can't plan this stuff. It just happens. As you know, in the entertainment industry, we have no control of our own lives. Other people make those decisions for us. And hopefully they can take you close to the direction you want to go into. I mean, me, like many other people, in 1973, when I moved to LA, I figured Johnny Carson's going to be retiring soon. I'm going to take his job. Well, little did I know that about 200 other people moved out the same time I did, expecting to do the same thing. And only one person could get it. And that was Jay. And then, of course, Dave did his thing. And, could I have been good at doing a talk show? Maybe, but I'll never find out. I wasn't that funny as a stand-up. I had a good solid 20 minutes. But beyond that, I was in deep doo-doo. I used to open for Howie Mandel. I used to open for Gallagher. And it was Gallagher who said to me one day, how much are they paying you to be my opening act? And I was doing magic at the time. And I was getting paid $150 a week. And he said to me, get rid of the card tricks and rope tricks, because the comics who open for me get $300 a week. So I slowly weaned myself away from the magic just to do stand-up, and doubled my salary in a couple of months.
Love that.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny, the things you learn out there?
Yeah, I mean, you got to put yourself out there to find those things out.
Right. Right.
At home and say, someday I'm going to do this. Because people come to me all the time and say, I want to do what you do. How do I do it? I said, you go out and host stuff, I don't care if you live in Toledo, Ohio, go to the Kiwanis Club or the Moose Hall or whatever and say, I want to host everything that you do here. Because the more comfortable you get on stage interacting with people, then when the opportunity happens, hopefully you'll be ready.
Well, and the next thing you know, you're known as an actor.
Yeah. Who would have thought, right? I mean, I couldn't have dreamt this career. So
I love it. I know your time's limited. I want to finish with this.
sure.
I mean, what's next? After New York, will you take the show somewhere else, or
Well, they
in New
talked to us
York?
about doing a tour.
Okay.
So I have to ask myself, is that something that interests me? I've toured many times back in the Nick days. I mean, I ask myself, how can things get much better than doing a show off Broadway in New York?
Right.
But we're being asked by theaters around the country to come and do it there. So we'll see if that happens. We're in conversation with some people about doing it as a show for a streaming service. And then I don't know. I got these auditions coming up for a couple of these Broadway shows. If I get lucky enough to get one of those, that would be amazing. Or not. I'm like,
Right.
at this point in my life, whatever happens, happens. I'm just enjoying every moment of it.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your time, and congratulations on your success.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking the time. I'm, flattered that you are interested in all the silliness. We're in New York City at New World Stages until June 2nd. You can go to lifeandslimes.com and look us up. And if you come into town, join us.
Well, I would. And if you come to Fort Worth, I will definitely be there.
That'd be great. That'd be amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And you be well.
Thank you. And thank you for watching Purple Roads. Keep your eyes, ears, and your heart open, and you'll find your purple road. We'll see you real soon.